G'day everyone, welcome back to another live hangout here at Voice Essentials. I hope you are well. I'm feeling well just because we're able to go live this week. If you tried to tune in for our show 2 weeks ago, was it 2 weeks ago? I think it was, with Sharon Tree. She was to be our special guest, my very good friend Sharon. I couldn't go live, and it whilst it was my problem to solve, it was just so you know, it wasn't my issue at my end. For some reason Google had turned my, I don't even know how to explain it because I don't really understand it. It's called something called the Cloud Console or something. Anyway, it's what allows my software to communicate with Google to do the live stream, and it had been turned to 0, which meant I had no, what are called quotas, I think, to go live. Long story short, I was talking to Sharon, and we're on Zoom and we're ready to go, and we'd had a nice little chat and we're ready to go live, and I went to hit live, and why won't it why won't it go live? Anyway, it wouldn't. It took me literally. I keep saying it, don't I? This is why more people, are in my area of expertise, singing, teaching, don't do the regular live thing, is because it's the tech issues that, and this was a random one. Like I'd never come across. I don't think I'd ever come across this one before. It just. And if you didn't have just a little bit of tech savvy, and I only have a little bit, but if you didn't have a little bit, you'd never be able to figure this one out. This was like so random. Anyway, we're back. And fingers crossed we'll continue to be back and Google won't turn us off. And anyway, I in the end had to create a workaround. I could even try to go into it for you, but I still actually don't really 100% understand what happened. I want to let you know, today we're doing a Q&A. Next week we're doing a Q&A. So now's the time for you to jump in, throw in your questions. Linda, who is no longer in daylight saving mode, which good for you, Linda. Many of you in the Northern Hemispheres have just stepped into your daylight saving. Well, Linda has just stepped out of hers. Linda will take your questions. She'll put it into the Google Doc for me, and we'll answer your questions today. Depending on how my voice goes, because it's been I've been on break. I've been on holidays for just over a week, about 10 days, and I didn't even do any teaching this morning. My 2 students this morning were both not able to attend their lessons for different reasons. So you're literally the first conversation I'm having today. So my voice might just tire a little bit quicker than normal. So it might be a shorter show today. We'll see. I feel great, but just to let you know, I had a really eventful 10 days. It started with, I had a small little operation to remove a benign tumor from my wrist, and really random little thing. Well, it's not so random. It left. I had to go into surgery for it, and it's left me with a quite a sizable, like a 6 centimeter scar, and it's healed up. It's healing up. I should say it's healing. It's not fully healed, but it's healing up quite well. That's how I started my Easter break holiday, but that didn't stop us from getting down to see my son in Wagga Wagga, which is literally 1,000 kilometers flight south of where I am, and he graduated from his military training at the Australian Defence Force, and so that was great. And so we've kind of had here in the Robinson household, we've kind of had a good break, but of course that has meant I haven't been teaching. My voice, my match fitness drops off a little bit, and so we'll probably keep today's session to probably about half an hour, I'd say. Depends if you get me going with good questions or not, I guess. Hey, I want to let you know about we have got 4. I've lined them up. They're all locked in. 4 incredible guests over the next 3 months. And so I wanted just to tell you about them. The first one is going to be Sharon. Obviously I've had to reschedule Sharon's live show to be in a couple of weeks. So in 2 weeks we'll see Sharon, and we'll be talking about myths and busting myths and all of that sort of stuff. And we were all keyed up to go. It was going to be a great show, and then what happened. After that, a couple of weeks later, on the 5th, I can't even read my own writing. I think it's the 13th of the 5th, the 13th of May. These are all Australian Eastern Standard Time. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the white bell icon, and it just gives you that reminder from YouTube that we're going live. We are going to be having the internationally acclaimed and highly respected speaker, Ken Bozeman. He's going to be joining us. His big thing is vocal acoustics, vocal resonance, teaching that highly complex space. We've had Ken on the show before. His is one of the most watched videos of any of my special guests on the YouTube, on the Voice Essentials channel. And that's despite the fact that the audio on that video, this was back in 2018 that we last had Ken on. And that show, despite the fact that Ken was amazing, I had like a dual audio thing happening, but the content is so good that people, I think, just put up with, my stuff up and listen to the content because it's that good. So don't miss that show. It's going to be awesome. We've then got Dr. Shannon Coates joining us late in May the 27th. And topic to be decided. Shannon is... we've had Shannon on the show many times. We're back and forth about what the topic will be. I know it will be super interesting. She's amazing. And then finally, in the beginning of June, the 10th of June, we're going to be having Heidi Moss back. You may recall we had Heidi on the show late last year, and Heidi's big specialty is the brain function around singing, the neurology of singing. Because she also has a background in science and biology. She's coming onto the show because there was another area that she's actually currently very passionate about, and that is the concept of play, the concept of play in our singing. This is a word I'm using more and more with my students. You've heard me use it quite a bit here on the channel, about learning to play. And in some respects that removes it lessens some of the negative tension of your practice, that need for perfection. Because when we play, we give ourselves the freedom to explore, experiment, and most importantly, make mistakes. So Heidi's going to come onto the show and talk with us about those things at the beginning of June. So we have, and in amongst all of that, as I said, we're going to do Q&A today. We're going to do a Q&A next week. We're also going to be doing some mini topics. I've got them all lined up. We're all raring to go. So again, subscribe, hit the white bell icon. You'll get the reminders, and we can go from there. I want to jump into your questions. I don't think there's any other news to let you know about. We're heading into the colder months here, and so everything's getting a bit... Here in Brisbane, when we get into our colder months, we get into our drier months. And so I'm having to make sure I keep up with my water, and I'm reaching for lip chapsticks and like lip balms and all those sorts of things, whereas most of you in the Northern Hemisphere, and hello to all of you who are watching this as a replay. So good to have you, so many of you. This show, over about a week to 2 weeks, gets viewed by about 500 people. So as a long view sort of thing, that's I'm just grateful that you tune in. I'm grateful that you find the content helpful, and so hello to all of you who watch this as a replay. So let's dive in to the show, and I've got a comment here. Your audio volume seems lower than usual. Does it? I can tell you, Dean, that actually it's sitting at the normal level. I don't know whether it's. I wonder, are you able to turn it up? I don't know. Linda is saying there's no issues at our end. It might be to do with your connection. Might be, Dean. And with Linda, I hope that improves for you. But yes, at this point in time, I'm not aware of. I'm watching my audio levels, and they seem to be okay. Anyway, let's dive into some questions, and we'll answer them as we go along. Okie dokie. Let's. I'm gonna bring this up here. I'm gonna bring that down there, and I'm gonna grab Mr. Fomiati's. Dean's just telling me that he's reconnected, but no worries, I can still hear you. I'm glad you can still hear me. What I can tell you, Dean, just very quickly before we jump in and answer Mr. Fomiati's question, who he's jumped in first. I do know that my audio level is lower than I might otherwise like it to be. The reason I do that is because I don't run anything through a compressor or a limiter in my audio line. And so to make sure I don't have moments where I get excited and start, blowing the mic out, I do run my audio quite a bit lower than what I'd like to. One day, I'm making no commitments, because I did look into buying a compressor, like a line compressor, to put through my system that would allow me to have a bit better volume. Honestly, the cost was just a bit prohibitive, and there's some other demands that our family budget has. So I decided to not do that, and just to put up with the fact that it's, unfortunately, hopefully it's not too big a deal. You can just turn up at your end, but it does mean that I don't blow you out with and distorted vocal. So hopefully that's okay. Okay, so let's dive in here and have a look at Dr. Fomiati's question. How important is pitch recognition when singing? Well, that's. I'm going to interpret your question, Dom, because it's important for your ear to recognize the pitch and interpret that correctly to your larynx, and then have your larynx correctly represent that in how quickly the vocal fold, the length of the vocal folds, the oscillation of the vocal folds, and then the secondary movement of your pitch and the sound that you're making through the vocal tract. So there is that is pretty important. The other way to interpret your question is that how important is it for me to be able to, for example, have perfect pitch, what some people refer to as absolute pitch. So there is a skill, if you will, called perfect pitch, where someone is able to, without a note being played for them, someone can say, please sing an A4, which A440 is exactly the pitch that an orchestra tunes to. And that person, without hearing a reference note, can sing that note. And on one level, it's quite a marvelous skill to have. I don't possess that skill. There are some people who believe that that skill can be developed. I'm not one of those people. It seems to me to be something that you are born with, that you can work as a muscle. But it seems that the majority of us are not born with that muscle. What most people are able to do, though, is refine what we refer to as relative pitch. Relative pitch is where, just by virtue of, muscle memory, really, repetition, a person is able to, within a semitone to a tone, sort of find themselves in the right ballpark of what a note should be. It's like an educated guesstimate, if you will, of note accuracy. And so if someone says, can you sing an A440? Well, someone who has spent all of their time playing in an orchestra where every orchestral practice and performance commences with a tuning to A440, that note is kind of etched into their heads. So they're able to kind of map from that note, not only from A440, but if they were asked to then, can you play a C4, which is the C below A4, then they might be able to quite easily map down from that reference note. See how it's the reason it's called relative pitch? They can then reference relative to what they know, and quite accurately identify that C4. So you can see there are these two pitch things. Some people go, well, gee, as a singer, wouldn't it be awesome to have perfect pitch? And look, it is, and I've worked with, and she's actually been here on the show once. My good friend, any of you who have my Voice Essentials exercise tracks, many of you will have heard a female voice on the track. She will often do the example of the higher voices starting to come in. That lady, her name is Renae Suttie. And Renae, amazing musician, amazing singer. I had the greatest privilege to be in a corporate duo with her back in the early 2000s, and some of the best fun singing professionally I ever had, in part because it was just such a privilege to sing with her. We used to have some really scary experiences, actually, because our tonal placement was so, I'm going to say, so exactly the same that we would lose. We'd be singing together, we'd hit a note, and maybe it was a held note, and both of us would lose our own voice in the sonic mix. And it was the most exciting, freaky experience to have as a singer, to lose a real sense of your own, where is my sound in that two vocal thing. Anyway, Renae has absolute pitch, and a really well refined one. And in someone like Renae, it can be a really powerful tool. For other people who, and this is a very small subset of the population. For other people who have absolute pitch and have been born with it, and they're very aware of it, but maybe are not developed singers, when they start to come to practicing and learning with their singing, absolute pitch can almost be in one sense, a negative in the development of their voice, because every time their voice does not hit exactly the note that they want it to hit, they hear it. And so it really can trip that singer up, and it can be quite a challenge. The other interesting thing, and I haven't done too much reading into this, but I do know that there is an observed deterioration in absolute pitch with age, and that is that it's a bit like, you know how as you get older, I mean, I've been wearing glasses pretty much my entire life, ever since I was about 10 or 11. I probably should have had them earlier than that, but all of my adult life I've worn glasses. But some people get to about my age now and they have to start wearing glasses because, the eyes aren't quite keeping everything in focus. What has been observed in absolute pitch is the pitch recognition starts to not deteriorate in the sense that they still can hear and apply the pitch, but it starts to, I think from memory, from the articles that I have read on this, it starts to flatten. And so that's interesting. You know, we start to, the pitch accuracy isn't as accurate as it would have been perhaps in their 20s and 30s. So interesting phenomena. And that's I hope that's a very long-winded way of talking to your question, Mr. Fomiati, about it. How important is pitch recognition when singing? Let's bring it back to pitch accuracy. Pitch accuracy in singing, look, it is, you know, you hear me many times here on the channel talking about the fact that we want you to be pitch accurate. But it's not the be all and end all. It just simply isn't. And for those of you who watch my vocal analysis videos, which incidentally I throw one of those up, at least one of those up a week, I'll often identify pitch inaccuracy in, you know, really famous singers, people who are amazing singers, but when we hear them in a true live recording, it is the norm that we hear pitch inaccuracy, and that's good. I love it when really renowned singers allow that authentic display of their voice. It's imperfect, and actually that's what, in my humble opinion, that's what makes it awesome. Does that then negate the need for us to develop our pitch accuracy? Absolutely not. If you have no pitch accuracy and you're all over the shop, and yet you want to be a vocal performer, you'll be limited in the type of audiences that will be happy to sit and listen to you sing. We do have to work towards refining our pitch accuracy. But what we're not looking to do is to develop our pitch to a point of perfection. Why? Because you're a biological instrument, you are imperfect by nature, and you will hit bum notes. It will happen. And so that's always important to remember. Linda is making this comment. Let me just jump in here, make this. Linda's making a really good comment here, which I think is worth putting up. Pitch inaccuracy is natural, and if it's not wildly out, it's cool. I can tolerate listening, but I cannot tolerate rhythm inaccuracy. If someone is out of time, it drives me batty. Or Linda, if people clap on 1 and 3 and it should be on 2 and 4, yes, it's, you know what drives me batty, and I'll share a personal experience of this. I do go to a local church, and the congregation that I am in are an aging congregation, and so they love the oldies but goodies songs, and in fact, I was putting together. I often lead them, and there's always there is always a mismatch between my rhythmic, phrasing. So now we're kind of taking that beyond rhythm, Linda, into the phrasing of songs, and to the point where, my phrasing is rather contemporary compared to what is really, the best way to describe it is very washed out phrasing, and sort of the idea of timing. Well, that might let's say that a good way that they would clap on 1 and 3 and I would clap on 2 and 4. Maybe that's the best way to describe it. Let's come back here, and there is some questions that I just wanted to quickly get to, in the absence of any others that are coming in here. Mackenzie, there was a question that Mackenzie Kate asked about how can I get, I'm reading over here, how can I get more power in my lower notes? I guess is my question. I'm really struggling with my musical theatre solo. Power in lower notes has to come, it's really interesting. Low notes, we have to learn to approach our low notes like we approach our high notes. And that is, we often want to, push down on low notes, just like we want to, reach and push up to high notes. And we have to be really balanced and have really even flow in our low notes, and really allow the voice to go down into that, down into that low stuff. Low notes are not my thing. I'm a true tenor, so I spend my time at the other end of the scale. Interestingly, I was doing some preparatory work, some administrational work this morning, in the absence of my 2 students, and the work I was doing was researching some new reaction videos that we're going to look at, and there's one that I'm going to do by a bass singer doing a quartet, and I didn't know who this singer was, and to be honest with you, I can't even remember his name now. I'll have his name when I do the reaction video. He's doing that song by Ed Sheeran, I See Fire, from the Hobbit movie. Fantastic song. And anyway, he's doing this, like he's arranged it for bass. Wow. It is cool. The reason I'm going to review it is it's so cool. And what I observed in them, in fact, there's 2 basses, perhaps 1 tenor and 1 baritone. In the 2 bass singers, because they're all seated in the video, and I can't wait for you to see it, and they sing this really low, but the way there is no tension, it's just this free flow of voice. It's so good, and it's so rich, but they are working within the confines of their anatomy. They're not trying to cause their anatomy to do anything that it's not at. I mean, they, from what I could observe and make out, they are really highly skilled singers. They've developed their voice, but they've developed it within the confines of their biology, but they're really balancing that airflow. It so often comes back to air, the way you manage your air. Singing's not all about air, but more often than not, the subtext of your technique is, what is your air doing? And that's often what we have to look at. We are going to go here, and one more question. Here we go. We've got a question here. Let's have a look. This question from Destiny. May I ask, Dan, are you what would be considered I think, is that how you pronounce it, leggero tenor? I think, so in the Fach system, F-A-C-H, the German Fach system of voice classification, there are 29 voice types from memory, and it is only from memory. Correct me in the comments section if I'm wrong. In one of my videos, I make note of this. I think there are, is there 13 tenor types or something? There's some crazy amount of, you can break the tenors down into this, you know, higher, finer sort of stratification of tenor. Over the years, different people have suggested that I'm different things, and I've never locked onto any one of them, only because in contemporary vocal, we just don't. Like, it's, voice type is a thing, particularly if you're in ensembles or you're wanting to do choirs, and there are contemporary choirs, or perhaps you're auditioning for a musical and you want to make sure that you audition for the right, you know, type, right part and role. Yeah, I'm not sure how you would classify my voice specifically outside of tenor. And that's because I'm a contemporary singer, but the classical Fach system, I do know, breaks it down. Destiny's saying that they are asking because that's what their voice is maybe like. Well, that's cool. That's cool. One more question, and then I think it might be that we call it a day, because I can start to feel my voice starting to go, oh, we're back at work. Anne recently, Anne asked, let me just come back to here. Anne asked, any tips on timing when working with, well, there you go. This is sort of in keeping with what Linda was talking about before. Any tips on timing when working with backing tracks and not straining the voice? One of the challenges of working with backing tracks, and I've done a lot of work over the years with backing tracks, is actually really getting the form right. That is the musical form, the verse, chorus, bridge, chorus. That's what's called form, right? And often backing tracks, and you'll hear this. Maybe a song has this really long intro. The original has this really long intro, and so sometimes a backing track will shorten that intro and give you, instead of it being a 16-bar intro, they might give you an 8-bar intro, and it just gets the person into the tune a lot quicker. And so sometimes finding, well, where do you come in? In fact, I'm working on a song with a student at the moment, and we are struggling with this particular backing track. Oh, it's the Tracy Chapman piece, Fast Car. And because that song is literally a loop, basically, of like this repetitive chord structure with almost no signals as to where you do or don't come in, it's really hard to identify where, you know, the chorus starts and the verse starts, and anyway, it can be a real challenge. The hope is that you find a backing track that like literally mirrors, it's exactly the same as the original, and so you spend a lot of time with the original, learning the form, learning exactly how long you have between, you know, how many bars between verses, and you really work with it that way. As far as not straining the voice, in the Voice Essentials program, we go right into that. That's what we're all here at Voice Essentials. We are all about efficiency, sustainability, and your vocal health. And that all comes on the back of great technique. And so I'd encourage you to jump in and have a look at the course if you haven't already. And also, you know, check out the channel, do a deep dive. We are very quickly approaching 1,000 videos here on the Voice Essentials channel. And one of the challenges I have in creating new videos is finding new topics, because we've kind of covered all of the major ones. Anyway, so what I'm getting at is there's a lot of information there. So jump in there and have a looky see. We're going to give the last question to Michael. And Michael has asked the question, what are the pros and cons of singing apps like Simply Sing and Yousician? The pros are that you, just like the Voice Essentials program, is that it's highly accessible. Not everyone lives in the privileged position of being close to high quality private tutors. Not everyone is in a situation where they can afford the expense of private tuition. And so apps like the ones you've mentioned, and also my online courses, what they empower us to do is it improves access. And so you're able to, as long as you've got basically a mobile device or a laptop, you can access these programs. The reason why private tuition, in my humble opinion, at this point in history, acknowledging that with AI and those sorts of things, who knows where it will go, but at this point in time, having a private tutor remains the gold standard, because what these programs can't yet do, things like Yousician and Simply Sing and these sorts of things, and my online course for this matter, they can't tell you when you're getting it wrong. As in, okay, so what will happen is my students, they'll come in for a lesson, we'll learn a new exercise. We work on it, we get it to a point where, okay, now go away and practice it for the next week. They come back. Inevitably, this happens 99% of the time. We have to further refine and tweak what that person has gone away and done with the activity in their own time, in their own practice. And it tends to drift away from the central tenet of what the exercise is really wanting to achieve. And so we come back, and with the help, in this case, with my help and my external ears, I'm able to go, hey, great work, good practice. Now let's tweak this, this, and this. Programs like the ones you've mentioned and the Voice Essentials program, the online course, can't do that yet. They are not able to give you that feedback. And so that's why private tuition, being in a room, whether it be virtually, online, through Zoom, like I teach online Zoom lessons, or here in my studio, remains the gold standard, because you get that personalized direction. That, and I'll just add another point, and these, I hope you hear these as not me not saying they're pros and cons. They're strengths and not so strengths, strengths and weaknesses. The other, I guess, weakness of any online program is a good online program will be rather generic, rather generalized. It has to be, because it's kind of catching all. It's designed to be quite universal. And that's important because that kind of helps to make sure it remains safe for the learner. When we become too specific, and so for example, in my programs, you won't, even though in my Voice Essentials program, you'll hear me give examples, you'll never hear me say, do it exactly like you see me doing it. Why? Because you're not me. I'm, as we were talking before, I'm a tenor. And so my voice is going to approach certain activities very differently. So when a singer says, or a teacher says, okay, here I've done this, Now mimic what you've heard me do. Try doing what I've just done. We're kind of getting into the zone of, I don't know that that's exactly what I want to do. If we were to go back 100 years, before we knew what we know now, what we know now about voice is like there is no comparison to what we knew 100 years ago. And so 100 years ago, if you wanted to have a singing lesson and you were a female, firstly, if you're a female, you would not come to singing lessons with me. Why? Because I'm a male. So instantaneously, I only would teach males. But it got to the point where actually, and going back to the Fach system, I would have only taught the very specific tenor voice type that I myself am, because it was very much driven by monkey see, monkey do. You had to learn to emulate the master teacher. We no longer need, and nor should we, teach that way. Why? Because we now know so much more about the science of the voice, the anatomy of the voice, how it operates. And so that's why I teach all voice types of every biological persuasion. And so that's something for you to just be mindful of, is that a good program is going to be rather general, and it will never be too specific. And it should never say to you, listen and do it exactly what you hear me do. It should be a little bit wider than that. We're going to call it a day. And, you know, in typical fashion, I've gone beyond what I said I was going to do. Anyway, there are some other questions there. I see them, but we'll have to get to those. Maybe next week. We're going to do another Q&A next week, so we'll have those in readiness for next week, and we may get to those at that point. I hope you've enjoyed today's live hangout. It's been a lot of fun, and seriously, we have got a gangbuster program lined up over the next 3 months. So lock it in. Mondays, 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. That's when you need to come and have a listen. You know, jump in with the chat. There is so much good discussion that happens in the live chat. And so if you're able to be a part of the live show, participate in the live chat. Ask your questions there, and I know you'll get a lot of cool things from it. Hey, don't forget to hit the, I've just seen Sharon say, hit the like button. Yes, Sharon, hit the like button. And I hope you'll enjoy, I hope you've enjoyed the show. I hope you have a great week, and we'll catch you again soon. I'm Dr. Dan. Sing well.